Hello, I'm Lawrence Kirkendall. I'm a retired biology professor in Norway, and I'm going to take you quickly through what Tom Atkinson and I have been doing with the neotropical Platypodinae. Platypodinae are what are known as pinhole borers, occasionally shot-hole borers. They're elongate, cylindrical ambrosia beetles that tunnel deep into wood. They break down wood when they're doing this, and this is very important in nutrient cycling. Most species colonize dead or severely weakened trees, and Platypodines are weevils, which is why I'm here. They're very similar to Scolatinae, to bark beetles, in form and in their habits, especially to bark beetles that are ambrosia beetles, but they're not the closest relatives. Nonetheless, taxonomists and forest entomologists usually work with both groups. So a lot of what I'm going to present in terms of especially sort of facts and figures are from a review paper that Tom and I have written, which will come out early next year, What We Do and Don't Know About New World Pinhole Borers. So how many species are there in the Americas? There are 15 genera in 3 tribes, 300 described species. Nearly all of these are tropical and subtropical. And between us in our home offices, we have 225 undescribed species from Central and South America. Just by comparison, if we compare them with ambrosia beetles, now just to remind you, these are beetles which are farming fungi that they carry with them to new hosts, and the larvae feed just on this fungus. There are about 900 described neotropical ambrosia beetles in the Scolatinae. So there's a ratio of about 1 Platypodinae to 2 Scolatinae among ambrosia beetles in the neotropics. This is a figure that we use in our review paper to show, actually to demonstrate how under-collected, how poorly known the regional faunas are for Platypodinae. What this map shows is that there are only 4 countries that we have good numbers for, and that's the US, which only has 7, Mexico, Costa Rica, and Peru, and these are countries that either Tom or I have worked intensively on ourselves. Platypodinae have really been dormant for the last few decades. The last 2 descriptions of new species were in 1978, and the last taxonomic work before Tom and I started was that by Stephen Wood in 1993, his monumental revision of the genera of Platypodinae. Now, what Wood did in particular in this paper was that he moved all of the New World species of platypus into other genera, mostly into genera that he erected, that he described in this particular paper. But there were some species he wasn't familiar with, or that he didn't know about, or that he didn't move, so I've been sort of cleaning up those after him. There are no keys to neotropical species until one that I've done with Tom for one small genus that came out a couple weeks ago. And unfortunately, due to the people that were working on Platypodines in the neotropics, which were mainly Stephen Wood, well, mainly Carl Schadel and Stephen Wood, there are very few species that are illustrated. But on the other hand, there are suites of photos that are accumulating on Tom Atkins' website, 220 species of Platypodines so far. This is Tom in his home office. I assume a lot of you are familiar with his website, which is the go-to place for information about bark beetles and pinhole borers, where you can find photos, nomenclature, distribution, and host records for all of the species in North, Central, and South America. So I'm going to give a quick overview of what we've done so far. I've done a couple house cleaning papers where I have synonymized species that needed to be synonymized and moved species into proper genera. For example, the paper that's in press now, I've transferred 49 species to other genera. Most of these are from ones that were still in platypus, and I've made 22 new synonymies. The first faunistic treatment after Wood shuffled all the species around was my paper in 2017, bark beetles of the pinhole borers of Peru. One of the things I discovered in doing this work, and in particular all the specimens I looked at, the 700 and some specimens I looked at for the Peru paper, is that there really are a number of platypodines that are undescribed but nonetheless are common and widespread. So this is an example from a new genus that I've described. This is in a submitted paper. There's one species, but it's really unique. And I have 164 specimens of it, and it's very widespread in the lowland tropical forests of the Guiana Shield and the Amazon basin. This was the first revision of the genera that Wood established, or of any of the genera that are in the neotropics since Wood's work. This came out just a few weeks ago. One of the things I emphasized in this review paper is the data gaps, what we don't know, in the hopes of encouraging researchers to take the gauntlet, so to speak. The current genera are not satisfactorily defined. We discussed this in our review paper, but Bjarte pointed this out already 10 years ago. We don't know yet what characters we can use that are the most reliable for grouping species into genera. We don't know what the functions are of the spines on the back ends of males, or the brushes of setae that are often on the foreheads of females, which are some of the main characters that we use for separating species. I point out species are undersampled, especially in the Amazon and Guiana Shield. Up to 2/3 in some genera, it's as many as 2/3 of the species are undescribed. And we really have trouble identifying females. Females in many cases can't even be identified to genus, so it'd be really helpful to have some better characters there. We know that pinhole borers, because they come in large numbers to fallen trees or even standing dead trees, they must be very important in wood decomposition and nutrient recycling, but we don't know much about that. We don't know how species differ in their ecological niches. We don't know very much at all about the relationships with their symbiotic fungi, with other microbes. We know that they use pheromones. We know that they stridulate, both males and females, but we know very little about the variation in this. Very little is known about the natural enemies of platypodines in the neotropics. Much more is known about this for Africa, for example. Behavior has been studied for very, very few species that occur in the neotropics. And they almost certainly have very interesting forms of social behavior, just as we're finding out for species in the Xyloborini tribe. And there must be a lot of variation in social behavior, but we know almost nothing about this, especially in the neotropics. And we don't know much about how species composition changes over space, whether we're talking about latitudinally or whether we're talking about changes in elevation. And many of the specimens we're looking at come from trapping, and we don't know what the biases are in trapping, like which species are caught in malaise traps, but not as often in flight intercept traps, and which species are caught at light, etc. we know something about this, and we review all of this in our review paper. This review paper is based on label information that Tom and I have captured from over 6,600 specimens and a review of the literature. I've already mentioned the numbers of taxa that are involved, and we review this in our paper, and we review the taxonomy, the biodiversity, and the natural history of American Platypodines, often by drawing parallels with what is known about species from other parts of the world which have been investigated in much more detail. Much of our knowledge in this paper comes from passive trapping. Roughly half of the records are from flight intercept traps, from light traps, or from malaise traps. So here you see that you really get appreciable numbers of species by these trapping methods and large numbers of individuals. This has really increased our knowledge of what species are where. So something about our planned activities. Tom and I got a Coleopterus Society grant to travel to Brazil, to Carlos Fleischmann, where we'll be going in spring of 2024. Carlos has over 3,000 mounted specimens of Platypodinae, both from flight intercept traps placed in habitats all over Brazil, and also in some material from French Guiana. So we're really looking forward to sorting through those and getting a better idea of the actual species richness in the Amazon basin and the countries to the northeast. So we're planning to do the Platypodinae of Mexico. Tom has started this and I'm helping him. I want to do an elevational gradients paper from Costa Rica, and we'll probably do something on the Platypodinae of Brazil. In the long term, we hope to revise all of the neotropical genera. We already have suites of photos, as I mentioned, for 220 species. Between us, we've seen almost all of the type material for the neotropical Platypodinae. 65 of the undescribed species already have photo suites, so we're really sort of catching up steam on this. We really hope to be able to recruit someone to do molecular work in parallel with our morphological studies. So a couple slides from Tom, because Tom is doing the Platypodinae of the US and Canada, including Hawaii, missing a parenthesis there, in a way as a test of using Lucid 3 and of developing character matrices for revising the genera as we're going to be going through them. There are only 7 species in this region. There's an introduced species to Hawaii, 4 species of quarantine interest that he'll be taking up in this paper. He'll be treating the sexes separately. So it will be an article with keys and with a discussion of characters and a lucid key, which will be based on a character matrix, which will really help us figure out how to do this for much larger groups of species. So sort of a little checklist of what we've done so far. There have been 2 house cleaning papers with synonymies and transfers. I have a paper about ready to submit with Tom's help on a really unique species that's in its own genus in Tesserocranulus. I mentioned the Myoplatypus revision that is already published, but the rest remain to be done. And I've also submitted a new genus, description of a new genus, which is currently under review. And I've done the Platypodinae of Peru. We're working on North America, or Tom's doing North America, and we're working on Mexico. That will probably be published sometime in 2024. I'm planning to do an elevational gradient, how numbers of species change and what taxa are involved as you go up in elevation along Volcan Barba in Costa Rica. And we'll probably do something on the Platypodinae of Brazil once we have all that data from our trip to Brazil.